Have you ever wondered what it would be like to suddenly step into a life of luxury? Imagine being a struggling student, barely scraping by, and then, in a twist of fate, marrying an 80-year-old millionaire wife. But what if just 1 week after the wedding, you discover secrets about her enormous fortune that no one could have ever imagined? Tonight, we uncover a story full of unexpected surprises, hidden truths, and the shocking reality behind what money and love can really mean. Are you ready to find out what happens when dreams meet reality? The eviction notice crumpled in his backpack served as a constant reminder that he had 3 days to produce $1,200 or find himself homeless. His studio apartment, barely larger than a prison cell, represented the last thread holding his life together. Through its paper-thin walls, he could hear Mrs. Chen arguing with her landlord about the same impossible choices he faced daily. Jason parked behind the coffee shop and checked his phone. 2 missed calls from Riverside General Hospital, 3 texts from his mother apologizing for being a burden, and a notification that his credit card payment was overdue. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, pushing down the familiar weight of despair that threatened to crush him each morning. Inside the coffee shop, the familiar ritual began. Jason tied his apron, forced a smile, and greeted the morning regulars who ordered their complicated drinks with the casual confidence of people who didn't count every dollar. He worked with mechanical precision, steaming milk and pulling espresso shots, while his mind wandered to his afternoon business administration classes at UC Riverside and his evening shift delivering pizzas until midnight. "You look tired, honey," said Mrs. Rodriguez, a regular customer who always left a $1 tip. "You taking care of yourself?" Jason's smile was genuine this time. "Just the usual juggling act, Mrs. R. How's your grandson doing?" As she spoke about her family, Jason envied the simplicity of her concerns. Normal problems like teenage rebellion and college choices, not the crushing weight of choosing between textbooks and groceries. When she left, he wiped down the counter and caught his reflection in the espresso machine's chrome surface. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his cheekbones looked sharper than they had a month ago. The morning shift crawled by until his manager, Dave, appeared from the back office. "Jason, you got a minute?" Jason's stomach knotted. Dave's tone carried the weight of bad news. "Sure, what's up?" "Corporate's cutting hours again. I'm gonna have to reduce your shifts starting next week." Dave wouldn't meet his eyes. "I'm sorry, man. If it were up to me." "How many hours?" Jason's voice remained steady despite the panic rising in his chest. "About 10 hours a week. Maybe more if business picks up, but 10 hours meant roughly $200 less per month." Jason nodded, maintaining his professional composure until Dave disappeared back into his office. Then he leaned against the counter doing rapid calculations in his head. The numbers didn't work. They hadn't worked before, and now they were impossible. His phone buzzed with another call from the hospital. This time he answered. "Mr. Williams, this is Sandra from billing at Riverside General. We need to discuss your mother's payment plan." Jason stepped into the storage room for privacy. What's the problem?" "The treatment she needs isn't fully covered by her insurance. We're looking at approximately $45,000 for the complete chemotherapy protocol. Without a significant down payment." "How significant?" "At least $15,000 within the next 2 weeks, or we'll have to discuss alternative treatment options." Alternative treatment options. The euphemism hung in the air like a death sentence. Jason closed his eyes, seeing his mother's face when she'd first told him about the diagnosis. Patricia Williams had raised him alone, working double shifts as a nurse to put him through school. She'd never asked for anything, never complained even when her ex-husband disappeared and left them with nothing. "I'll figure something out." Jason said. "I understand this is difficult, Mr. Williams, but time is a factor with stage 2 breast cancer." Or, after hanging up, Jason sat among the coffee supplies, surrounded by the scent of Colombian beans and vanilla syrup. The walls seemed to close in as he faced the mathematics of impossibility. His mother needed $15,000 in 2 weeks. He had exactly $437 in his checking account. The afternoon brought no relief. In his corporate finance class, Professor Martinez discussed leverage buyouts and capital restructuring, while Jason's mind churned through desperate scenarios. He could drop out of school and work full-time, but even minimum wage jobs wouldn't generate the money fast enough. He could take out additional student loans, but his credit was already maxed out. He could ask relatives for help, but the Williams family tree was full of people struggling just as hard as he was. His friend Marcus Thompson sat beside him occasionally, shooting concerned glances in his direction. Marcus came from a middle-class family in Orange County, not wealthy, but comfortable enough that $30 textbooks didn't require 3 weeks of planning. After class, Marcus cornered him in the hallway. "Dude, you look like hell. What's going on?" Jason hesitated. Marcus had been his closest friend since freshman year, but their friendship existed in the carefully neutral territory of campus life. Jason rarely spoke about his financial struggles, and Marcus rarely mentioned his family's weekend trips to San Diego or his spring break plans in Cabo. "My mom's sick," Jason said finally. "Cancer. The treatment costs more than I make in 2 years. Marcus's expression shifted from casual concern to genuine worry. "Jesus, Jason, how can I help?" The offer was sincere, but Jason knew Marcus's family couldn't write a $15,000 check any more than his own could. "I don't think anyone can help with this one." That evening, Jason's pizza delivery shift took him through Riverside's affluent neighborhoods, where perfectly manicured lawns fronted houses that could accommodate his entire apartment building. He delivered a $40 order to a mansion in Victoria Grove, and the teenage girl who answered the door paid with a $100 bill, telling him to keep the change as if $60 meant nothing. Driving back through the city, Jason passed Mel's Diner, a 24-hour institution that had been serving truckers and college students since the 1960s. The neon sign flickered against the darkness, and Jason realized he hadn't eaten since his free employee meal at the coffee shop that morning. He checked his wallet, enough for coffee and maybe some free bread if Rita was working. Rita Gonzalez had been serving late-night diners at Mel's for 15 years. She knew the difference between customers who tipped well and those who counted every penny. But she treated everyone with the same maternal kindness that reminded Jason of his own mother. The diner was nearly empty, except for a trucker reading a paperback novel and an elderly woman sitting alone in the corner booth. "The usual, honey?" Rita asked as Jason slid into his regular spot at the counter. "Just coffee tonight, and maybe some of that fresh bread we're about to throw away." Rita winked. "I think I can manage that." Jason smiled gratefully. Rita's small kindnesses had gotten him through more difficult nights than she realized. As she poured his coffee, he noticed the elderly woman in the corner booth watching him. She was elegantly dressed in a way that suggested quality rather than flashiness. A navy blue dress that looked expensive pearls that caught the diner's fluorescent lighting silver hair, styled in a sophisticated bob. Jason's attention was drawn back to the counter when another customer, a middle-aged man in a stained work shirt, began berating Rita about his order. The man's voice rose as he complained about everything from the temperature of his coffee to the speed of service, his words becoming increasingly nasty and personal. "Listen here, lady, I'm paying for decent service, not whatever this is supposed to be." Jason stood up, Hey, that's enough. The man turned his anger toward Jason. Mind your own business, kid. She's doing her job just fine. Maybe try some basic courtesy. The confrontation could have escalated, but the man seemed to recognize something in Jason's tired eyes that suggested he had very little left to lose. After a few more muttered complaints, the customer left money on the table and walked out. Rita squeezed Jason's shoulder. You didn't have to do that, sweetie. Yes, I did. Jason sat back down, his hands shaking slightly from the adrenaline. He pulled out his wallet and left a $5 tip beside his coffee cup. Money he couldn't afford to spend, but Rita's kindness deserved recognition. As he prepared to leave, the elderly woman from the corner booth approached. Up close, Jason could see laugh lines around her bright blue eyes and the confident posture of someone accustomed to being listened to. Excuse me, she said, her voice carrying a slight southern accent. I couldn't help but notice what you did for Rita. That was very kind. Jason shrugged. She's good people. Doesn't deserve to be treated like that. Indeed. The woman extended her hand. I'm Eleanor Hartford. Jason Williams. Her handshake was firm and brief. I'm curious, Jason. Why did you leave such a generous tip when you're obviously counting every dollar? The directness of the question caught Jason off guard. Most people politely ignored the obvious signs of his financial struggles. How do you know I'm counting every dollar? Eleanor smiled. Honey, I've been around long enough to recognize the signs. The way you calculated the cost of coffee against something else, you need the careful way you eat that bread, like each bite matters. Plus, Rita mentioned you're a regular who orders just coffee and free bread. Jason felt heat rise in his cheeks, embarrassed to have his poverty so transparently visible. Rita works hard. She deserves respect. That doesn't answer my question. Why tip $5 when you need every dollar you have? Jason studied Eleanor's face, trying to understand why this stranger was pushing the conversation into such personal territory. Because kindness matters more than money. And because my mom raised me to treat people right, regardless of what I've got in my wallet. Eleanor's expression softened. Your mother sounds like a wise woman. She is. She's also... Jason stopped himself. He'd already revealed too much to this stranger. She's also what... Jason surprised himself by answering. She's sick. Cancer. Needs treatment we can't afford, and I don't know how to fix it. Eleanor nodded slowly. Life has a way of testing our character when we're at our most vulnerable. You passed a test tonight that most people fail. Before Jason could ask what she meant, Eleanor was signaling Rita for the check. Let me pay for your coffee, Jason. It's the least I can do for someone who stands up for hard-working people. That's not necessary. I insist. Eleanor handed Rita a $20 bill. Keep the change, dear, and thank you for the excellent service. Rita beamed. Thank you so much, Mrs. Hartford. You come back any time. Eleanor turned back to Jason. It was a pleasure meeting you, Jason Williams. I hope things work out with your mother's treatment. She handed him a business card before walking toward the door. Jason looked down at the simple white card with elegant black lettering, Eleanor Hartford, and a phone number. No title, no company name, just a name and a way to contact her. Wait! Jason called out. But Eleanor was already climbing into a modest sedan parked outside. He watched her drive away, wondering why their brief conversation had felt like something significant had just happened. Jason's next few weeks developed an unexpected rhythm. His financial situation remained desperate. But his evenings at Mel's Diner took on a new dimension when Eleanor began appearing with increasing frequency. Their conversations started casually. Eleanor asking about his studies, Jason inquiring about her day, but gradually deepened into something resembling friendship. Eleanor was an exceptional listener. She asked thoughtful questions about Jason's business classes and seemed genuinely interested in his perspectives on economic theory and corporate strategy. In return, she shared stories of her travels, mentioning places like Paris and Tokyo, with the casual familiarity of someone who had actually been there, not just read about them in magazines. "My late husband Charles was in business," Eleanor explained during one of their conversations. "Small scale, nothing fancy, but he taught me to appreciate the fundamentals of commerce and human nature." When Jason asked what kind of business, Eleanor's answer was always vague. "A little bit of everything. Hardware, some manufacturing." Charles always said the secret was treating people fairly and paying attention to details that other people overlooked. Jason found himself looking forward to these conversations more than he cared to admit. Eleanor possessed a combination of worldly wisdom and genuine warmth that made him feel less alone in his struggles. She never offered pity or unwanted advice about his financial situation, but somehow her presence made the weight of his problems feel more manageable. What Jason didn't notice were the small ways his life began improving during this period. His manager at the coffee shop suddenly found additional shifts available. A professor mentioned an opportunity for paid research assistance that seemed perfectly suited to Jason's schedule. His mother's insurance company approved a payment plan that had previously been denied. Eleanor's questions about his mother grew more specific. She wanted to know about Patricia's prognosis, the quality of her doctors, the details of her treatment plan. Jason found it easy to talk about his mother with Eleanor. She listened with the attention of someone who understood the complexity of loving someone you might lose. "She raised you well," Eleanor observed one evening as they shared a piece of apple pie at Mel's. "Single mothers who work in healthcare are a special breed of strong. They see suffering every day, but still come home and make sure their children believe in hope." "How did you know she works in healthcare?" Eleanor smiled. "The way you talk about taking care of people. That kind of empathy is usually learned from watching someone model it every day." Their friendship deepened when Eleanor began sharing more personal details about her own life. She spoke about the loneliness of widowhood and the difficulty of making genuine connections at her age, and the way most people treated elderly women as either invisible or incompetent. "People see my age and assume I'm either wise or foolish," Eleanor said. "They rarely bother to discover who I actually am." Jason understood. "People see my clothes and my car and assume I'm lazy or irresponsible. They don't see the 3 jobs or the 16 credit course load." "Exactly." Eleanor reached across the table and briefly touched his hand. "Kindness is rarer than diamonds, young man. Most people are too busy protecting themselves to notice when someone else needs protection." Jason began to realize that Eleanor might be as lonely as he was poor. Their friendship filled a void for both of them. Jason found a surrogate grandmother figure who offered wisdom without judgment, while Eleanor discovered someone who valued her thoughts and company without any apparent ulterior motive. One evening, as they walked through Sunset Park after dinner at Mel's, Eleanor grew unusually quiet. The park overlooked the city lights of Riverside, creating a backdrop that seemed designed for important conversations. "Jason," Eleanor said finally, "I need to ask you something, and I want you to think carefully before you answer." Jason felt a shift in the evening's energy. Eleanor's tone carried a weight that suggested whatever came next would change things between them. "Okay," he said carefully. Eleanor stopped walking and turned to face him. What if I told you there was a way to solve your mother's medical expenses and your financial problems, but it would require a significant commitment from you? Jason's pulse quickened. What kind of commitment? Marriage. The word hung in the air between them, like something that belonged in a different conversation entirely. Jason stared at Eleanor, certain he had misunderstood. I'm sorry, what? Eleanor's expression remained calm and serious. I'm proposing marriage, Jason. A business arrangement that would benefit both of us. Jason's mind reeled. Eleanor, you're 78 years old. I'm 24. People don't just marry for practical reasons. Eleanor interrupted. Young man, practical marriages have been the foundation of human society for thousands of years. Romantic love is a luxury that most people throughout history couldn't afford. Jason sat down on a nearby bench, trying to process what he was hearing. Are you serious? Eleanor sat beside him. Completely serious. Here's what I'm proposing, a marriage of companionship and mutual benefit. You would provide me with the company and care that I need in my remaining years. In return, I would provide you with financial security enough to cover your mother's medical expenses, your student loans, and a comfortable living situation. Eleanor, this is crazy. I barely know you. You barely know me. I know enough. Eleanor's voice carried quiet conviction. I know you work 3 jobs to support yourself and help your mother. I know you tip waitresses money you can't afford to spend because you believe in treating people with dignity. I know you stand up to bullies even when you're exhausted and have nothing to gain. I know you're studying business because you want to understand how to build something meaningful, not just make money. Jason shook his head. But marriage, there has to be another way. What other way? Eleanor's question was gentle but direct. You've been trying to find another way for months. How's that working out? The truth of her words hit Jason like a physical blow. He had been trying every possible alternative, and none of them were working. His mother's condition was worsening while he struggled to keep their heads above water. What exactly are you proposing? Jason asked quietly. A practical arrangement. Separate bedrooms, no romantic expectations. You would be my companion, someone to share meals with, accompany me to social events, help me navigate daily life as I age. Think of it as a job that comes with exceptional benefits. Jason laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. A job where I marry my boss. A job where you help a lonely old woman while solving your financial problems. I have a decent savings account, Jason, enough to cover your mother's treatment and your education with plenty left over for a comfortable life. Why me? You could find someone my own age. Eleanor smiled sadly. Most men my age are either married deceased or looking for a nurse they can sleep with. I'm not interested in being anyone's caregiver or sexual convenience. Jason stared out at the city lights, trying to make sense of the surreal conversation. What about love? Don't you want to find someone you actually care about? I do care about you, Eleanor said simply. Not romantically, but genuinely. You're intelligent, kind, hardworking, and honest. Those qualities matter more than passion when you're talking about spending your final years with someone. And what about me? What if I want to find someone to love? Eleanor was quiet for a long moment. That's a fair question. I suppose we would need to discuss those possibilities as they arise. I'm not interested in controlling your personal life, Jason. I'm interested in not being alone. Jason closed his eyes, feeling the weight of an impossible decision. This is insane. Is it more insane than watching your mother die because you can't afford her treatment? Is it more insane than dropping out of school and working minimum wage jobs for the rest of your life? Eleanor's questions cut through Jason's resistance like a blade through silk. She was right, and they both knew it. His current path led nowhere good, and traditional solutions weren't working. How much money are we talking about? Jason asked. Enough to pay for your mother's complete treatment immediately. Enough to finish your education without working. Enough to live comfortably while you figure out what you want to do with your life. And what would you want from me day to day? Companionship. Conversation. Someone to share meals with and accompany me to social events. Help with tasks that become more difficult as I age. Basic human connection with someone who doesn't see me as a paycheck or a burden. Jason thought about his mother lying in a hospital bed while he counted dollars and fell short every time. He thought about his father, who had abandoned them both when the responsibility became inconvenient. He thought about the eviction notice in his backpack and the impossible mathematics of his current life. I need time to think about this, he said finally. Of course. Eleanor stood up from the bench. Take a week. But Jason, understand that time is a factor for both of us. Your mother's condition won't wait for you to find a perfect solution, and my offer won't remain available indefinitely. As they walked back to their cars, Jason felt like he was walking through a dream. 6 hours ago, his biggest concern had been whether he could afford gas for the next day. Now he was contemplating marriage to a woman 3 times his age, who claimed to have enough money to solve all his problems. Eleanor, he said as they reached her modest sedan. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why haven't you remarried before now? I mean, you've been widowed for 10 years? 30 years, Eleanor corrected. And the answer is simple. I've never met anyone I could trust with both my heart and my fortune. Your fortune? Eleanor smiled mysteriously. I told you I have a decent savings account. I may have understated things slightly. Before Jason could ask what she meant, Eleanor was driving away, leaving him standing in the parking lot with a business card in his hand and a decision that would change everything. Jason spent the next week in a state of suspended reality, going through the motions of his daily routine, while his mind churned through Eleanor's proposal from every possible angle. The practical side of his brain compiled compelling arguments his mother needed immediate treatment. His debts were overwhelming and conventional solutions had failed. The emotional side recoiled from the idea of marrying someone he barely knew, regardless of the practical benefits. His friend Marcus noticed the change immediately. Dude, you're even more distracted than usual. What's going on? Jason had rehearsed this conversation several times, trying to find a way to explain Eleanor's proposal without sounding completely insane. I met someone who might be able to help with my mom's medical expenses. That's great, a scholarship program or something. Not exactly. Jason took a deep breath. She wants to marry me. Marcus nearly choked on his coffee. She wants to what now? It's not what you think. It's a business arrangement. She's elderly, needs companionship, and has money. I need money and could provide companionship. Jason, that sounds like what? Marcus struggled for diplomatic phrasing. Like something that could go very wrong very quickly. What do you actually know about this woman? The question highlighted the enormous leap of faith Jason was considering. His research into Eleanor Hartford had yielded frustratingly little information. Public records showed that Charles Hartford had indeed owned Hartford Hardware, a small business that had operated in Riverside for 15 years before closing after his death. Eleanor appeared to have lived quietly as a widow with no social media presence, no criminal record, and no obvious red flags. "I know she's kind," Jason said finally. "I know she treats service workers with respect. I know she listens when people talk and asks thoughtful questions. That's not exactly a thorough background check for someone you're considering marrying." Marcus was right, but Jason's desperation was growing daily. His mother's oncologist had called that morning with an update that made Eleanor's proposal seem less like an option and more like a necessity. "Mr. Williams, we need to discuss your mother's treatment schedule," Dr. Chen had said. "The delay in beginning chemotherapy is allowing the cancer to progress. We really can't wait much longer." "How much longer can we wait?" 2 weeks, maybe 3 at the outside. After that, we're looking at significantly reduced treatment options. Jason had thanked Dr. Chen and hung up, feeling the walls of his world closing in. 2 weeks. Eleanor had given him 1 week to decide, and his mother had perhaps 2 weeks before her treatment options diminished dramatically. That evening, Jason found himself at Mel's diner earlier than usual, hoping Eleanor would appear. When she walked in at exactly 7 o'clock, Jason realized she had been timing their meetings to coincide with his schedule. Another small kindness he hadn't noticed. "You look like you've been thinking," Eleanor observed as she slid into the booth across from him. "I have been, and I have questions." "I'd be surprised if you didn't. What would you like to know?" Jason had prepared a list of practical concerns. What exactly would our living arrangement look like? Where would we live? What would people think about the age difference? What happens if one of us wants out of the arrangement? Eleanor nodded approvingly. "Good questions. We would live in my house. It's modest, but comfortable with separate bedrooms and plenty of privacy. As for what people think, that's their problem, not ours. Anyone who matters will understand that unconventional situations sometimes require unconventional solutions. And if one of us wants out, we draft a prenuptial agreement that protects both of our interests. If you decide this isn't working, you keep whatever money has been spent on your mother's treatment and your education, plus a reasonable settlement that ensures you're not left worse off than when we started." Jason was impressed by Eleanor's practical approach to what felt like an impossibly emotional decision. "What about your family? Do you have children or relatives who might object to this arrangement?" Something flickered across Eleanor's face, a brief shadow that suggested complicated family dynamics. "I have some relatives, but they've never shown much interest in my welfare. They're more concerned with what I might leave behind than how I live my remaining years. What about my mom? What do I tell her about how I suddenly have money for her treatment?" Eleanor smiled. "You tell her the truth. You married someone who cares about both of you and wants to help. Your mother is a nurse, Jason. She understands that sometimes unconventional solutions are the only ones that work." Over the next hour, Eleanor answered Jason's questions with a combination of practical wisdom and genuine care that gradually dissolved his resistance. She had clearly thought through every aspect of their potential arrangement, anticipating problems and preparing solutions with the thoroughness of someone accustomed to complex negotiations. "There's one more thing," Eleanor said as their conversation wound down. "I want you to understand that this decision has to be entirely yours. I won't try to pressure you or make you feel guilty about choosing your own path. But I also want you to know that my offer is genuine. and comes from a place of real affection for the person you are. Jason looked across the table at this remarkable woman who had appeared in his life at exactly the moment when he needed her most. Eleanor's proposal was unconventional, but it was also honest, thoughtful, and potentially beneficial for both of them. If I said yes? Jason said slowly. When would this happen? As soon as possible. Your mother's timeline doesn't allow for extended courtship. That night, Jason lay awake in his cramped studio apartment, staring at the ceiling and trying to imagine his life married to Eleanor Hartford. The practical benefits were undeniable. His mother would receive the best possible treatment, his education would be secure, and the crushing weight of financial desperation would disappear overnight. But beyond the practical considerations, Jason realized he genuinely liked Eleanor. Their conversations had become the highlight of his otherwise exhausting days. She was intelligent, funny, and possessed a perspective on life that came from decades of experience navigating complex situations. If he had to choose someone to spend time with, Eleanor wouldn't be a bad choice. The decision crystallized when his phone rang at 2 a.m. His mother's voice was weak but urgent. Jason, I'm at the hospital. I think you need to come. Jason arrived at Riverside General to find his mother in the emergency room, pale and struggling with severe nausea from the cancer's progression. Dr. Chen met him in the hallway outside her room. Mr. Williams, your mother's condition is deteriorating more rapidly than we anticipated. We need to begin treatment immediately, or we're going to lose the window for effective intervention. Immediately means what? This week. The insurance company is still processing the payment plan, but we can't wait for bureaucratic approval. We need a significant down payment by Friday, or your mother will have to be transferred to a county facility with more limited treatment options. Jason looked through the window at his mother, remembering the countless sacrifices she had made to give him opportunities she had never had. Patricia Williams had worked double shifts to pay for his school supplies, had gone without new clothes so he could have decent sneakers, had never once complained about the burden of raising a child alone. On Friday morning, Jason called Eleanor from the hospital parking lot. I'll do it, he said without preamble. Are you certain? I'm certain that my mother is going to die if I don't do something drastic. And I'm certain that you're offering me a way to save her life while building something meaningful for both of us. Eleanor was quiet for a moment. Jason, I want you to be sure this is your choice, not just your desperation talking. Maybe they're the same thing. Maybe sometimes desperation forces us to make choices we should have made earlier. All right then. Can you meet me at the Riverside County Courthouse this afternoon? We'll need to apply for a marriage license. This afternoon. Your mother needs treatment to begin immediately. We don't have time for extended planning. Jason spent the morning in a surreal haze, calling Marcus to ask if he would serve as a witness, explaining the situation to his mother, who was too sick to do more than nod weakly and trying to process the fact that he would be married by evening. Marcus met him at the courthouse with an expression of deep concern and reluctant support. Are you absolutely sure about this man? I'm sure that I'm out of options, and this woman is offering me a solution that could save my mom's life. Beyond that, I'm not sure of anything. Eleanor arrived at the courthouse wearing a simple navy dress and carrying a folder of documents. She greeted Marcus with gracious warmth and produced a prenuptial agreement that had been drafted by her attorney overnight. I want you to read this carefully, Eleanor told Jason. It protects your interests and ensures that you benefit from this arrangement, regardless of how long it lasts. Jason scanned the document, his eyes widening as he read the financial terms. Eleanor's decent savings account was apparently substantial enough to cover not only his mother's complete treatment, but also his remaining education costs, living expenses, and a generous settlement should their marriage end. Eleanor, this is incredibly generous. Are you sure you can afford? I can afford it, Eleanor said firmly. The question is whether you can afford not to accept it. The ceremony itself was brief and businesslike, conducted by a judge who had obviously performed thousands of similar civil ceremonies. Jason wore his only suit, Eleanor wore her navy dress, and Marcus stood as their witness with an expression that suggested he was watching his friend make either the best or worst decision of his life. Do you, Jason Williams, take Eleanor Hartford to be your lawfully wedded wife? Jason looked at Eleanor, seeing not a stranger, but someone who had appeared in his life, like an answer to prayers he hadn't known how to pray. I do. Do you, Eleanor Hartford, take Jason Williams to be your lawfully wedded husband? Eleanor's voice was steady, but Jason caught a glimpse of emotion in her eyes that suggested this moment meant more to her than the practical arrangement they had discussed. I do. After the judge pronounced them married, Eleanor surprised Jason by reaching up to kiss his cheek gently. Thank you, she whispered, for giving an old woman a chance to matter to someone again. Before Jason could respond, Eleanor was handing him a check that made his knees weak. $100,000 made out to Jason Williams with a note in the memo line, for immediate family medical expenses. Eleanor, this is too much. It's not too much. It's exactly what your mother needs, and it's a tiny fraction of what I can afford to give. Jason, you saved my life by agreeing to share yours with me. Let me save your mother's life in return. That evening, Jason sat in his mother's hospital room while Dr. Chen reviewed the treatment plan that would begin the following Monday. Patricia Williams was alert enough to squeeze Jason's hand and whisper her gratitude for the miracle that had appeared just in time. How did you manage this, sweetheart? She asked. Jason looked down at the simple gold band on his finger. Eleanor had insisted they wear rings to make their marriage appear genuine to the outside world. I married someone who believes in helping family. You married someone, Jason? What aren't you telling me? Jason explained the situation as gently as possible, watching his mother's expression shift from confusion to concern to something approaching understanding. She must be a very special woman, Patricia said finally. She is Mom. I think you're going to like her. That night, Jason followed Eleanor to her house, his house now, he supposed, in the modest neighborhood where she had lived quietly for the past 30 years. The house was larger than he had expected, well-maintained, and furnished with an elegance that suggested either exceptional taste or significant resources. Your room is upstairs, Eleanor said, leading him up a staircase lined with family photographs. You'll have privacy and your own bathroom. I'm downstairs if you need anything. Jason's room was comfortable and clearly prepared for his arrival. Fresh linens, empty dresser drawers, and a small desk positioned near the window. Eleanor had thought of everything, creating a space that felt welcoming rather than temporary. Eleanor, Jason said as she prepared to leave him to settle in, I just want you to know that I'll do my best to be a good husband to you. I know this arrangement is unconventional, but I'll try to hold up my end of our bargain. Eleanor paused in the doorway, her expression softer than he had ever seen it. Jason, you already are a good husband. You married me to save your mother's life, knowing it would complicate your own life tremendously. That kind of love and sacrifice is exactly what marriage should be about. As Eleanor's footsteps faded down the hallway, Jason sat on his new bed and tried to process the day that had changed everything. This morning, He'd been a desperate college student facing impossible choices. Tonight, he was married to a woman who had appeared in his life like something from a fairy tale, offering solutions to problems that had seemed insurmountable. Jason's first week of marriage passed in a strange blend of normalcy and surreality. Eleanor proved to be an ideal roommate. She was quiet in the mornings, an excellent cook, and possessed an extensive library that included first-edition books Jason had only read about in his literature classes. They established a comfortable routine of shared breakfast and dinner with Eleanor, respecting Jason's need for privacy and study time. But small details began accumulating that suggested Eleanor's modest savings might be more substantial than she had indicated. The wine cellar contained bottles,